Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Marsanico. Welcome to the A Train to Sedona. The A Train to Sedona is also the name of a book I wrote, a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. In it, I share my successes, my failures, in the hope that my journey will inspire yours. You can purchase a signed copy of the book on my website at lindamarsanico.com, also at retail stores and bookstores. And let's remember that in New York City, the A train is an express, so hop on board. I have a free gift for you, a cheat sheet for higher vibration living. It has 7 tips to help you raise your vibration. For example, tip number 6 is the breath. Engage the parasympathetic nervous system to relax your sympathetic nervous system, reducing your blood pressure and creating calm. You can download the free gift at lindamarsanico.com. I have 2 disclaimers. The first is that this broadcast does not establish a professional relationship. And the second is that the opinions expressed on this broadcast do not represent Talk Radio New York City. Today, my guest is Karie Cassell. Karie Cassell is a wealth of health with a unique background as a registered dietitian for 30 years, having studied both traditional and non-traditional medicine. She has specialties in diabetes, heart health, disordered eating, and more. Karie has also worked with Olympic-level athletes with her IOC Sports Nutrition Diploma. Overall, her knowledge gives a full-spectrum approach to her programs. After witnessing almost every diet trend imaginable and eventually facing her own health challenge, Karie started to notice the gaps in the flawed diet and health industry. Her passion to put the HEAL, H-E-A-L, back in health sent her on a quest to discover the missing pieces with her life mastery certificates. Having a life coach certification, Karie takes you beyond the symptom level to the root causes with a new formula in her new programs and international bestseller, The Domino Diet, How to Heal You from the Inside Out. Thoughts, breath, hormones, feelings, actions, results, freedom. Karie is a dietitian on a mission, bringing you back to the true meaning of the word diet, from the Greek origin word dieta, meaning a way of life. Karie Cassell has the mind of an experienced dietitian and the heart of a transformational life coach. Learn more about Karie, who is featured on Fox News, ABC, NBC, Marketplace, AP, Chatelaine, Canada Living, Today's Parents, Best Health Magazine, and more. Welcome, Karie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. And actually, thank you so much for having a platform that appreciates broad spectrum well-being, because it's such a valuable, I think, resource for others, but also for myself to be able to deliver a message on a platform that actually embraces the concept. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Could you tell me about your past and your journey, which brings you to where you are today?
Oh gosh, well, brace yourself because I'm in my late 50s now. So people will usually ask me, what made you become a dietitian? That's kind of the crux of the question. And the way you've illustrated it, I can kind of take us back even further. But nonetheless, what I thought was normal was not. I was reading the Nutritional Almanac book when I was 13. Others are reading Vogue magazine, and I'm reading the Nutritional Almanac book. It's in my house because my parents were selling for a multi-level distributing company. They were selling vitamins. So in my house, the discussion about what does vitamin E do? What does vitamin C do was kind of a normality. And I had shelves stocked with with books about the vitamins and vitamins themselves. So again, I'm surrounded by this, so it's kind of equipping me without my realization. It wasn't as though I was setting out to do anything of that category. I actually started off as a Bachelor of Music in my career,
Ah.
because I just naturally played piano by ear and it just came easy to me. And so when I left high school, I literally said, what will I do that's easy? I don't have to work at it. That was my mindset back then.
Mhm.
Long story short, I, it's sort of like you get knocked over this way, then that way, as life will sort of nudge you, is probably a more gentle way of saying it. And I ended up in Australia with my backpack on my back, and I kind of heard a whisper, become a dietitian.
Oh.
And I was like, what is a dietitian? I really didn't know what that was. In my exploration, I discovered, I kind of maybe don't mind this because I knew what vitamins were. So
Yeah.
again, it's kind of my past was equipping me. I do remember being in a biology class, and I'm not really what you'd call an academically high achiever at this point in my life. And being able to answer when the teacher was asking, what does vitamin C do or E do? And I'm answering. And my girlfriend behind me says, how do you know this? And I looked at her and said, how do you not? There's breadcrumbs. And clearly, I like to say God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And I was being called. And long story short, I'm trying to shorten it. I end up becoming a dietitian, but I already had entered alternative medicine prior to that for about 10 years. There was these jobs I would come up and sort of by opportunity, would you be hiring here? Would you be willing to interview for a job here? And it was always alternative medicine.
And what were you doing with alternative medicine?
I was helping those in reflexology, working in places where they would sell the supplements. I already had a bit of knowledge. So it was kind of a variety of alternative medicine background, and I was very drawn to that. In fact, when I was starting off to become a dietitian, my plan was to become a dietitian who could be open-minded to have both sides of the coin.
Mhm.
So I believe I still carry that with me. But once I was very much exposed to the science, I started to fall in love with the science as well. I like to say nowadays that I am the heart and science of wellness or energy medicine or whatever you want to term it as. But I think it's a great background, and working with medicine man or Aboriginal cultures where there's a lot of plant-based healing, I learned a lot from that background as well. So that's kind of alternative, non-traditional, whatever you want to
Yes.
term it as. It weaves in and out of my life and really has helped serve people who
Yes, very
appreciate both
much.
backgrounds. I will say though that neither one of them are solving a lot of disease trends. And I have felt like in my own journey in health, which I can expand upon, like a child between two divorced parents who are kind of pointing out each other's flaws and how one parent's maybe better than the other. And I kind of felt like that between the two types of medicine,
Yes.
that they were not really speaking to one another. They were kind of pointing at each other, and that they weren't really solving the crux of it, the real root of
Yes.
challenges. So that's what led me to become also a life coach, to be honest, because I knew there were missing pieces. How's that for a
Well,
long-winded
that's
way of answering that question?
a lot of discovery, a lot of work to figure things out. You can
Yeah.
look back and it may sound simple, but it really doesn't sound simple to me.
Not
But
at the time, yeah.
no, you're looking and searching what's the way. So I'm wondering what led you to write this book?
When so there was about a period of about 10 years where I was in my own health journey, for lack of better words. I, through menopause, I ended up with a lump on my pituitary gland and on my thyroid. And if you know anything about those, which I'm sure you do, they're the motherships of
Yes.
hormone everything. So if you can imagine, if those are not functioning to their best, my body acted as though it was in menopause and pregnancy at the same time.
Oh,
So
wow.
I felt pretty exhausted. I felt like the energy that I generally had, it was definitely apparent to me something wasn't right. And I felt when I was helping my own clients with a message around health that I was kind of feeling like a fraud. That if I'm not feeling up to snuff and I'm
Mm.
telling people how to do X, Y, and Z, who am I to be saying this? So it was really creating a lot of conviction. And I didn't know, I lacked the tools to understand the emotional side of emotional eating, put it that way.
Mm.
Tell you how to eat, but I didn't understand the emotional piece.
Yes.
And I knew that that was a gap. And I was experiencing my own emotional piece. And I thought actually I was going to retire. Financially, I was set up decently. And I thought, you know what? It is just time to retire. I'm in my mid
Oh,
50s and I'm thinking, well, it's just around 52, something like that. And I thought, that's it. But there was a huge whisper or nudge that said, you're not ready for that. There's still things you want to do. Do you want to hit the pillow for the last time, not having sought that out?
well, God wasn't letting you off the hook because you
Not
had
at all.
contributions to make.
And the convictions were louder, but I actually had a powerful question asked of me that you can ask of yourselves. And it was, hey, Karie, where do you see yourself 3 years from now?
Mm.
And putting that question on put the reality in my perspective, in my visual, that maybe I'd be cleaning house and cooking. And I thought, that's not very life-giving to me. I mean, I don't mind those things, but it's not what I want to end on.
Yes.
Nonetheless, I became a life coach through this and that nudge and friends and serendipitous events. And the life coach piece, I literally at one event sat at the edge of my seat, hearing her name is Mary Morrissey, uh, discussing this formula about how we have results in our life. You sort of said it earlier in my introduction, which is our thoughts create our feelings. And it's our feelings that have an influence on our actions, and it's our actions that have an impact on our results. And for whatever reason, it was just said at a certain pitch, we'll say, that I kind of, as if I was laying back and then stood up in my seat, even though I wasn't laid back, but I just felt the edge of my seat and went, oh, that's where it is. There's more to the formula than what I had been operating at, where I had been taught from my curriculum, both alternative and non-alternative, was very much symptom focused.
Yeah.
Here's your symptom, here's your pill, here's your diet. Whether it's a vitamin pill or whether it was a medication pill, it was always
Yes.
this sort of treadmill. And I believe what I had experienced was burnout,
Yes.
symptomized through these, pituitary gland and thyroid gland, exhaustion nonetheless.
Yes.
And I hadn't thought about, pardon the pun, that it was my thoughts that were perpetuating some of my own dis-ease that led to disease. And okay, that meant that it was happening for my clients as well. But I didn't understand the thought part and self-sabotage and why the emotional eating in the first place. If you were having troubles in your relationships, we
Mm.
would want to talk about that, no, as opposed to just the food to really go down,
Absolutely.
right?
Now, can
Well,
you hold that thought?
I
Excuse me.
sure can.
Can you hold that thought because we're ready for a commercial break?
Oh, you bet.
And when we come back, I want to hear much more about thoughts and actions and feelings so that we can understand ourselves better.
I'll unpack that, you bet.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills, on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
If you don't have your health, what do you really have? It's time to feel good in your body and shift from struggle to ease. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Tripp, your host of Nourish the Soul, where we explore the sacred wisdom of your body while you sit back, relax, and go on a journey of self-discovery. Join me every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to awaken your heart, transform your well-being, and unlock a deeper understanding of yourself.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the A Train to Sedona with my guest, Karie Cassell, who was talking about thoughts and breath and hormones. Please continue.
Oh, absolutely. And so, as I mentioned, this formula that I was so privileged to come upon, which is now looking back, quite a few gurus have talked about. Nonetheless, I'll expand upon it, but I'll tell you the way I heard it first, which was our thoughts lead to our feelings, which then lead to our actions and then our results. Well, that was just outstanding to me because I really thought the feelings were all the dictators of things. I'm craving this, I'm feeling emotional, I'm feeling sad, therefore. And I hadn't thought about the precursor to that, which is our thoughts. And then because I have the background in science, and as you alluded to at the top of our session, the parasympathetic system, the rest, digest, create system, or the fight flight response. And these things were familiar to me in my study, but I hadn't brought it full circle. And when I began to really unpack it, when you think we are breathing, and we're breathing constantly and we're thinking constantly, I mean, it's 24/7, our thinking as well. You know how you could be in the shower fighting with your spouse, thinking about a teenager. I mean, these events that haven't even occurred. At the very least, whatever we're thinking is producing a breathing pattern, as I'm sure you're very aware of. And without our awareness, we're quite often by default in the fight flight response, which is good in the sense that it's helped us over the years. I haven't been eaten, neither were you. We were able to eat, and we're here because we've had such a fine-tuned, very well-oiled machine called the fight flight response. But within that response is cortisol and epinephrine, like things that are difficult on the system when it's so chronic. Number one. Number two, if we don't have ways to release it. And so many of us are sitting at keyboards or driving and not really releasing it. Back in the day, the fight flight response, cortisol buildup was released in the flee or the fight or what have you. Nowadays, it kind of builds up. Nonetheless, by breathing calmly, so if you were thinking about beaches while you're in the shower, as an example, you're in calm breathing and it switches over to the rest, digest, create response. In other words, your brain is reading, your thoughts are reading how you're breathing, knowing then which pathways to switch on and off. I always like to say it's kind of like an AM or FM dial on your radio, where you're not on both at the same time. You can only be on one or the other. Why does this matter? Well, by our thinking and then our breathing, however you want to slice it or dice it, we are affecting the chemistry in our body.
Yes.
And because I'm a dietitian, it leads a lot into the feelings, emotional eating, and so forth. But even maybe more impactful is the rest, digest, create response. Meaning, if we're breathing calmly, we're going to have a digestive system that's more superior to digesting our food, absorbing the nutrients, helping us feel fuller faster, and on and on and on this formula goes. So the whole formula that I'm talking about has become the domino diet. That if you have your thinking in order, it'll domino to the rest. The diet
Boom, boom,
is
boom, 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 boom. Yeah.
You betcha. So how you think is how you breathe. How you breathe activates your hormones. And it's your hormones that dictate your feelings. And then your feelings, then actions, then results. So there's this domino effect that you don't even have to unpack if you just get your thoughts in order by gratitude or being aware of your thermostatic setting, if you want to say, of your thinking patterns. Am I someone who holds a grudge? Am I someone who thinks anger easily? Am I fighting in the shower a lot? Whatever, however you catch your thinking. And it is so powerfully attached to our health and also eating in and of itself. So that's a long formula, but it's actually very condensed if you think about, hey, an attitude of gratitude does matter, which you've probably, and I've seen some of your episodes or heard some of your episodes. I know that that's a huge part of your message.
Thank you for yours. And I wanted to ask you about the role of spirituality in your life and in your work.
I've had a relationship, like any relationship, with an ebb and flow. You can have a love for a spouse, for instance, and there's an ebb and flow within that. So I would say spirituality has ebbed in and out of my life in the way that I can tell when I'm in alignment with things, when things are going along more with a better rhythm in life. Generally, it's because I'm plugged into what I call spirituality. And times when I was unplugged and things were a little off balance. And generally, there's a very huge connection for me, mind, body, spirit. I don't just say as words that are kind of common now. Literally, I believe, are mind, body, and spirit. And it's when we are treating them like silos that we run into trouble. But when we connect them all, including spirit, that we're most in alignment with more energy, better balance in our health, relationships. So spirituality is an absolute for me. It's a core value for me. How I come into my spirituality has varied over the years. It might be walking in nature where I plug in and then I hear from parts of my intuition, my higher self. I'm very strong believer in what I call God, Jesus, Mother Mary. But I'm very also aware and open to the fact that nature might speak to somebody first, or music. But I still believe what created all that in the first place is where I believe my spirituality exists. Absolutely in what I call God.
When you had the nudge about being a dietitian,
Yes.
had you gotten similar nudges before that?
Oh, yes. I remember, I don't remember the age. I do know that it was, before high school type age. And I was reading the Bible. And I thought, well, this is not the easiest read. But there were times where I was able to kind of tap into the message. And I just remember saying, whatever I do, I want to be able to help families. I wasn't sure, am I going to be a music teacher or am I going to help them in their wellness? I didn't have the word dietitian at the time.
Yes.
I just knew that there was this calling again to help with wellness. Now, I didn't understand that really what I was on the quest for is full spectrum well-being.
Yes.
And that is where we are rooted in our human experience, where we are most content in 4 particular areas, which is when we have our best experience of health and well-being, but also our relationships, our love of ourselves, and also pets, but also our families. And a relationship is also with your spirituality.
Yes.
And the other is your vocation or vocary or purpose or career, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
That was huge for me. That was a major focal point for me. And the other one is money and time. Like, you can earn money, but you have the time to enjoy it. And those 4 areas are equally important. And the way I like to look at it, honestly, is like 4 tires on a vehicle.
Mm.
You don't pick a favorite tire.
Mm-hmm.
You need them all 4 to drive in balance. When one area is flat, if I'm focusing too much on career, not enough on health, your vehicle's out of balance. If you're focusing too much on a relationship and not thinking about your own health, same be said. So we want balance. And sometimes we can be neglecting in an area and wonder what's going on. And I believe this out of balance is trying to get our attention to change things. And using the vehicle as another analogy, it'll speak to us in warning signals, our vehicle, our bodies, when you're feeling a symptom. So I just didn't have the wherewithal when I was having my symptoms that my body was trying to get my attention. Hey, Karie, you're meant for more. Hey, Karie, there's a bigger message.
Yes.
And I just was interpreting it with unskilled ears and eyes and so forth. And now I, as a life coach, can also, extract that in our conversations and bring us into, let's look at full spectrum well-being and not just the number on a scale, for instance, which is very important. Speaking of going past that into spirituality, because there's a bigger message for all of us to deliver. That's why we're here.
And so you learned a lot from your own situation with your pituitary.
Yes.
And you healed yourself, and you're able to help your clients.
Yes. And my own spouse.
And what was the last thing?
With my own spouse, with my husband, he was very much in the symptom world. There was high cholesterol, higher sugars, gout, which is, if you haven't heard of gout, it is a very painful disease of the joints where crystals form, and often in the feet, for instance. And in his case, that it was the feet, so he wasn't able to be as mobile. And there's a lot to unpack with that. So we can move on to the next question, or we can dive into this one a bit more. But
I'll leave that to you.
Well, for me, I'll just say this. As a dietitian trying to support my husband and his symptoms, the eat this, don't do this, and do that was not effective. Speaking at the disease level was not effective. And it really made me feel like I was going to lose him. How am I going to continue as a dietitian if I can't even help him? And the life coach hat is what saved the day by understanding what he was really after. So because it takes a little bit, and I think we're going into a break here right away, I wonder if when we come past the break that I can really unpack that. But what I will say is, inside all of us is generally a dream or a legacy or a burning desire goal that's not being expressed. And when it's not being expressed, it kind of, we'll say, morphs, or your issues lie in your tissues is another way that has been said before. And it'll get our attention in negative ways because it's trying to get our attention. If everything was in alignment, there's nothing to get our attention about. Things are going well. When you're experiencing discontent or longing for something better, like I'm longing for a better way. I just don't know how. Listen, there's messages in there. And that's what was for my husband, Stephen, and has been for me and my clients. I'm able to speak his story out because I have his full permission, but I don't in terms of my clients. However, in my book, there's many, many, many case studies, and their names are protected. So there is an awful lot that I've discovered when you go to what the person's true heart's desire. We will have that become the real, I call it like a tow truck. When you really get that ignited, the health comes along for the journey.
Well, that's something we can come back to after break. Yes. If you want to share more of your husband's story, I'm going to leave that to you. That sounds very exciting to me. But we're going to take a break now. We'll be back.
You bet.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the A Train to Sedona with my guest, Karie Cassell. Now, you were talking about Heart's Desire and your husband Stephen's journey. I'll let you continue.
All right. Yeah, he's brought me a lot of curriculum. So yes, Stephen, as I had alluded to, was having a lot of symptoms. And I just kind of knew the writing was on the wall, having been in the business long enough, and based on his age, because he happens to be a lot younger than I am. In any case, nothing I was saying was really resonating for longer than a 2-week span. Yes, he would follow certain ways of eating, and it just would only last for so long. And then when I became a life coach, I got to tell you, it was within 2 weeks of understanding this, your thoughts produce your world, understanding it a little deeper, I began to ask him the question, what was really underneath him stuffing? What was he stuffing down? And what was really trying to emerge? And what was the fear? And we unpacked that a little more. And it really came down to the fact, something he had said over and over and over again, but it was almost becoming like wallpaper or like furniture in your house. He wanted to be a singer. He wanted to be a singer specifically in a band. Now, I can see that my own subconscious had fear around that, because I thought, where does a band play? What's this environment going to be? This is not healthy. I mean, I would have my own thoughts about it. And if he's handing you this precious little baby to hold, and the person doesn't seem trustworthy to hold it, they're probably not going to hand it over to you. And so there was a little bit of this, he's not revealing his full hand, and he's not even hearing it for his own self. Fact is, once I began to realize I'm either going to lose him to this or that, let's pick your poison. I thought, no. There must be something underneath this that is the true truth with a capital T. So we just said, let's just get this underway. Within 2 weeks' time, so much to be able to speak on, and I can if there was more time, but let's just at least say this. I was able to get him on a stage with a band that became his band. In 2 weeks. I mean, we're talking years he was having these symptoms. And then what happened was just astounding to me. He would come to me and he'd say, okay, I want to look really good on the stage with my black cowboy hat and my black outfit. And, he had put on a little bit of weight with his indulgences. And so, because he liked food, period. And I said, well, gosh, it'd be the same thing I've been saying for years, that we would walk a bit more and you would eat healthier, like I suggested. But you see, he heard it at a very different pitch. It was incented by the burning desire. It was incented by the fact that he had this dream, not at a symptom level, which is very negative. You might die if you don't do this. It's very negative sounding.
Mhm.
So on behalf of him sounding better, looking better, he still to this day, I think he's 5 years into the journey of being in a band, is still without gout and has normalized his cholesterol levels and blood pressure and all the things that was really leading to a lot of heart disease, because he's expressing from his heart. And
Yeah.
he was an angrier person. When we reflect back, we can really see it better. And now he's very vulnerable. There's shows where he's crying. So they say when your heart opens, your eyes leak. And so there's something to the effect that's happening in his life where he's expressing his true self, his authenticity. And that became the cure.
That's
Because
wonderful. What a wonderful story.
right, when we're operating from that level of thinking, when we're burning desire, heading in the direction of our dreams, our health comes for the journey to give us the energy for it. And I believe that's what happens when we begin to hit our 50s, maybe slightly sooner than that, that the incentive to go to the gym for 2 hours in a day lessens, because we want to do more with our life, and our health is there to help us with that. It kind of makes a bit of a pivot. And anyway, that's not for everyone, but it is for a large majority.
Very interesting. And how wonderful a beginning, ending, and continuing of Stephen's journey.
It is. Thank you for that. Yes.
You talk about 4 hidden barriers to success. Would you talk about that?
Yeah. And so I'm not the only one that has discussed these particular ones, or at least the way that they've been coined. And I have to give credit to Gay Hendricks, some of his literature, Mary Morrissey as well, and Matt Boggs. There's, a collection of people I've gathered from. And it turns out, and again, in our DNA, we have our fight, flight response, but also in our DNA, we wanted to fit in. To be cast out of the herd was very risky. It was cold. We were probably not going to survive. So it still perpetuates in our modern world, where we might fear abandonment, because we certainly don't want to be abandoned. We might be, the weak link and somebody that's going to be out in the cold. I'll just say what they are first, and then I can expand upon them. So the fear of abandonment, the fear of failure or being fundamentally flawed, like there's something wrong with us, the fear of the burden of success, and the fear of outshining. Well, how does that? Well, the first one's obvious. The first one of abandonment I've just alluded to, which is, well, let's say, if I join a marathon, if I'm going to decide to make that my next endeavor, what about Wing Wednesdays with my friends? Because I won't be able to participate in that. Will I be accepted still? Like, it'll play out in very unusual yet very impacting ways. We don't want to be abandoned. The fear of being fundamentally flawed, or that's probably very also common sense in the way that, well, I failed before. I don't want to fall on my face. What if I tell everybody I'm going to do this and then I don't? This whole fear of failure, really, at the end of the day. The fear of burden of success is one that you might not recognize as easily, but it'd be something like this. If I get to be so successful expanding my company, I'd have to hire more people, and that's going to be more stressful. Or if I win the dream home, I'll have to pay more taxes, and I'm going to have a bigger home to clean. Like, it'll come out in these really, really? Because if I had more money, because I'm rising in my business, I probably have more people to help me manage it. Or if I win the dream home, gosh almighty, I could probably handle somebody cleaning my house too, like hiring them. Anyway, it comes in subtle ways, but they're very impacting. And the fear of outshining. I'll give you an example that was in my life. So I remember my father, who graduated school, but didn't go on to have his career in a university. I'm part of the reason they had me at a very young age, we'll put it that way. And I remember him being in his work environment and coming home and saying, the suits were here today and they changed X, Y, and Z. The suits were the university people, the educated people. This was the term he used. And when I went off to university, I didn't want to be a suits person. I didn't want to be one of those people. So I remember when I would come home for visits and they would ask, how are you doing in university? I would dim it down. I didn't want to outshine. I didn't want my father to perceive I was one of those. So I would dim it down. And this is many of us, maybe we don't want to earn more money than our spouse or our father did because of what are they going to think? So we will dim our light.
Yes.
To fit in the herd.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, out of all those 4 hidden barriers, underneath all of that is fear. The fight flight response, and it's trying to keep you comfortable. And I'm sure you've heard the acronym for fear. There's many, but one is it's false evidence appearing real. We're not running from mammoths anymore. We are in shelters. Most of us have food if we're especially listening to devices or looking at devices. So that we really want to get a handle on that. Fear's not going to go away, but we can shine a light on it. Like darkness, we can just shine a light.
Very much.
And in my case, learning to understand that fear is along for the ride. We're not going to get rid of it when we're growing. And that fear can be beside us in the passenger seat or in the rear. Kick fear to the rear. Because otherwise what'll happen is it'll morph. So this idea of maybe writing a book comes to our mind. Fear comes along, and these 4 hidden barriers being part of that. When we begin to understand, oh, that's normal. It's just trying to keep me comfortable. Great, good understanding. Because what's next after that is, if we don't understand that, it'll morph into emotional eating, emotional drinking, emotional spending, emotional scrolling, the fight, flight, freeze. We're checking out of life. Is causing us to go into delay instead of moving in the direction of what we're really here for.
Yes, fear needs to be addressed because it grows unaddressed. So we have about 2 minutes to break. I wanted to ask you about the Domino Diet formula. We could talk a little bit about it and then continue after break if we need to. But what is the formula?
So the formula is something I've been unpacking throughout subtly and sometimes right up front, which is your thoughts lead to how you breathe, and your breathing activates hormones, either the parasympathetic or the sympathetic, as we've been discussing. And the hormones dictate the feelings, not the other way around. And it's the feelings that create our actions or impact our actions or lack of actions, and then our results. So that's the Domino Diet formula. The word diet, I got to say, how this came to me, by the way, was in a dream. The whole formula and the dominoes, and I could see words on these dominoes nonetheless. And I heard the Domino Diet, and I said, I am not putting the word diet on the cover of my book. Heck to the no, because that's a 4-letter word most people do not like. And I thought, oh, and then I really sat with it the next day, and I plugged in, had a chat with God and said, what is this all about? And I was led to, hey, Karie, don't you remember? It's from the true meaning of the word diet, from the Greek word dieta. It means a way of life. Bring back the true meaning of the word diet as a way of life. And so, hey, that's why it's on the cover. And that's become my mission, to talk about all of this besides just the diet alone, because it is about a way of life, your relationships, your health, your time, money, freedom, and your career and purpose.
Yes. Talking about getting information from dreams, Niels Bohr, the renowned physicist, dreamed of the atom. He had no words to describe it, and he created that. And I think that that's universe's way of jump-starting us. But we'll talk some more about your book when we come back.
Awesome.
Time to take a break.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Hi, I'm Linda Marcanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the A Train to Sedona with my guest, Karie Cassell. I wanted to ask you about your craving checklist.
Oh, yeah. I love talking about food, period. But I love, as you might have kind of heard a theme, I go underneath, like what's underneath that. And when people say they have cravings, it's not to be berated. I actually think there's a lot of messages from our cravings. And one of them might be craving salt. Well, when we're craving salt, it's possible that we are low in electrolytes or we're dehydrated or both. I mean, there's more to it, but that's one aspect. If we're craving sugar, well, it could be that we are giving long gaps of our food intake, like not enough fuel going on board. Really, at the end of the day, our whole body, our brain system, for instance, is on protection mode for our core. Our heart is always beating. We're breathing. This 24/7 is going on, and we're not always fueling it. So the brain is very, very wise in being able to, okay, well, if she's not going to listen to this message, I'm going to send off the troops to give her this message. And okay, the troops might be saying, hey, I need sugar. And generally speaking, nowadays, we're not just grabbing the apple, we might be grabbing the Danish, and lo and behold, we end up creating some kind of like addiction cycles. Nonetheless, I like to unpack that more. There might be gaps in our eating. What about if we're craving chocolate? Yep, it's different than sugar. It can be hormonal imbalance that we're experiencing when we're craving chocolate. We might have lacked sleep, and we're looking for serotonin. We might be looking for serotonin because we're looking for connection. And so sometimes I'll kind of ask better questions. Powerful questions are really what we're going to have better answers from.
Yes.
And it might be, are you missing something? And generally that can be a good part of it. But the other is you might be low in nutrition, period, a certain vitamin, a mineral. And it's been wonderful to be able to say there's more to it than just the fact that you feel flawed because you're craving an item and self-sabotaging. I'll just go out on a limb and say this as well. Some diets that others are following are very unhealthy, and that our body will go craving things to help rectify that. And that in that case, sabotage is a very good thing. In other words, thank goodness that you were sabotaged back into the ordinary way of eating so that you could get some of those nutritional aspects back in your life that were going to be negated. because I have seen so many malnourished situations come out of our modern day society. So you can be overnourished in some things and undernourished in others. And that craving checklist has really helped me to help others.
And sometimes when people are on an unhealthy diet, after a while, they stop the regimen, they gain the weight back. And it really needs to be a lifestyle. You know,
Yes.
going back to the Greek word,
Oh,
a
yeah.
lifestyle, if
Yes.
it's going to be sustainable.
100%. And if we don't understand our mindset around it, then we will gravitate to our old ways. There's actually a book that's sitting right beside me by Maxwell Maltz, who like a psychologist from a way back, but it's called The Magic Power of Self-Image Psychology. And there's a quote in there I just love, which is, you cannot outperform your own self-image. And understanding that our own thoughts of worthiness and self-sabotage, as I've been alluding to, are so important to understand at the root level, again, the thought level, because we'll find these sabotage patterns just simply because we don't feel we're worthy of having a healthy lifestyle.
Very complex, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, we are. We're just making
We are.
interesting.
Yes, we are indeed.
Yes.
Now, is there a particular aspect that you would like to talk about regarding your book? I have questions, but that we discussed, but I wanted to
one
leave
of the questions that generally will come up is a chapter in my book that I called, "What do fruits and vegetables and forgiveness have in common?" And a lot of people they feel intrigued by that subchapter title. And so I'd like to just kind of say that our way of being in life, if we are kind of set to anger a bit easier or holding grudges, or I mean, who hasn't had some sort of pain or hurt in their lives? Generally speaking, we've either hurt someone or we have been hurt, and there's kind of these grudges that we carry, and they have become a huge part of emotional eating. So when we understand forgiveness more, then we can understand our emotional eating patterns more. So it's really important to unpack our journey as human beings. The mind, body, and soul are united. Yes. And with that, I generally will try to help us understand over the decades, depending how many decades you've been given the privilege of being on the planet, that in our first 10 years, we're usually living very much in our imagination, kind of in this wonderful world where there's not a lot of negative thinking as a rule. And then in the next decade, we're very much into schooling and our smarts. We're living more in the mind, generally speaking. Then there's some aspects in life where maybe it's more spiritual. Certainly it was for me more into my 40s and upwards. And so these three almost separate entities of mind, body, spirit living in various parts of my life, and I speak for many, bringing them together in a unity, I think had been the missing piece for a lot of individuals. When we have troubles with our body, we'll go to see one professional. When we have troubles with our mind, we see another professional, or spirituality, another professional. But having it be in one program or one entity is a unique experience. And I think that might be a missing link. And so that's been my next level of my mission, having my book become a course, having it become where we're not just taking it as a one program that you do in 2 weeks, you come to the end of that as a diet would, and then that's it. No, we want to unpack all of us and looking at casting a kind glance at our life versus all the judgment that might be otherwise there, and the forgiveness that goes with that. Forgiveness is so important. It is. Yes. And of ourselves.
Oh, definitely. It has to come from self first, and then we can give it out.
Yes.
How long do you see your course taking? If someone enrolled,
I have a few courses, and I cater to where you're at in your stage of change. Probably the most popular one is one I like a 4-month journey for most healing. Number one, yes, we are generating new cells every day, but I'm using the red blood cells as a marker of our journey. Our red blood cells last 120 days, 4 months. And so when there's a diagnosis, for instance, until that 4-month journey has lapsed, do we see the new red blood cells operating at a whole new level. And so I like to have a target of what can that next level of red blood cells be introduced to, like more hydration, better fruits and vegetable intake, more walking, more serotonin. And that next batch of red blood cells is going to be, our red blood cells communicate everywhere in our body, cell to cell, organ to organ. We can heal from the inside out. So 4 months, I think, is an ideal, but there are people that really do well with just start with a 30-day, 21-day, so that they can get the train on the tracks. How's that? There's a few courses.
You talk about the 120-day renewal. Is that the course, the 4-month course that is the ultimate course that you give?
Yeah, that is the sweet spot. I mean, there are individuals who work with me for a year or more because that's their journey. I mean, put it this way, once you have new red blood cells, how about what those next ones can be exposed to as well? Onward we go. So I do think 4 months is a nice sort of a minimum.
Yes.
And it gets, some people are very equipped with great knowledge. They just need to fine tune it and polish the stone. 4 months, I think, is a good fair, give it to yourself if you've never tried that before, because it's long enough, but not too short.
Yes.
To create new habits and new patterns in your life.
So how can people reach you?
Most people find me by the good old Google world. The Domino Diet is easy to remember. I have discovered that's one way. Others are Googling for Karie Cassell, and you're going to see my life coaching programs, my courses. I'm sure that links and things like that are also in most of the podcasts that I do. So I'm sure that's the case here too. Often what I'm doing is offering incentives, like free gifts, like the craving checklist is one that I often give out as a free gift if you're interested in that. And so sometimes there's QR codes and so forth that are part of that document that you can find me.
Well, thank you for being with me today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. My pleasure. Anytime I get to speak a broader message on health is a win-win for me as well.
So we're on the same page with that.
Good, good.
So I wanted to say that next week, my guest is Jacob Cooper, who has had an NDE, and he's the author of several books, and he'll have a lot of interesting information to share. So parting is such sweet sorrow. It is time to break for the show. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
And thanks for your support, tech person.